Fantastic. This conference call is titled Team Building, and I want to get into how the dealerships, really, we could say this about any business, but obviously we're always focusing on car dealerships. And in this environment, in our environment, the car dealership business, there's a lot of things we tend to do in a dealership. Sometimes it's sales versus service, or used car department versus service, the parts department versus service. There's a lot of interactions inside the dealership that can cause concern on building a team. But we're going to really kind of hone in on the positives and the negatives that happen consistently in building teams. We're going to look at them in some detail. As always, if we go through this call, you can push the number 1. Mike, our moderator, will see that your hand is raised, and he will acknowledge you, and feel free to interact in that regard always during our calls. And at the end of the call, we'll have time for questions or comments also, and you can raise your hand in that same fashion by pushing number 1, and Mike will see that your hand is raised. When you go through your actions every day, I'd like you to challenge yourself with this question. Are my actions building our team? Are they a positive for team development? I think too many times we go through these decisions and we're putting out this fire or that fire, and we're not addressing the team in an appropriate fashion. I like to think of us, and we're going to talk about this, comparison to a professional team, such as right now the NBA's, the big teams, they're in the playoffs coming towards the finals. And you can see that if you watch that, or really any sport, they're a professional team. And I'm really using that as a comparison because no matter what we do, we are a professional team. We're the same thing. We make a living at doing what we do, taking care of customers. They make their living playing basketball, but we can learn a lot from their team structure. They have a coach. They have the players. Sometimes the players interact poorly and cause friction in the team. Sometimes the manager responds poorly and conflicts with the team. But I've seen situations where one player made a bad play and blew it. Yeah, and another team member would be getting on them like, man, you idiot, you actually threw the ball out of bounds. This is the big game. We can't make mistakes like that. Are your actions, is that action an example of how to build a team? Or would it have been better to come over, hey, no problem, you missed that one. We'll get it this time. Don't worry, we'll get the ball back. We're professionals, just like that professional team. And today we're going to look at some common mistakes in team building by management, and we're going to look at some positive techniques. But first, let's look at some common mistakes, some errors that management makes. First one is they criticize the errors or mistakes in front of the team members, or worse yet, customers. There's a good, solid practice in coaching that I think we all need to implement. We praise in front of the team a good result, and we coach alone one-on-one with a negative result. Never allow yourself to take a negative event in front of another team member. And I have seen it in front of customers. It's more rare, but that's actually a worst-case scenario. If you ever see a member of management criticize, trying to make an impression, like in front of the customer. If the customer complains, they call the team member over and start yelling at them in front of the customer, like, look how well I'm handling this. That is so negative for the team builder, but yet it's a common mistake. Another common mistake I see a lot in the field is the management never points out the good performance or result. They only point out the negatives. We have a situation where when you're going through your day, if all you do is, as a manager, point out the poor performance, don't look for building a team in that kind of environment. It's so destructive for the customer also. It reduces everything they do, and they become fearful of making the mistake. Always understand that if you're only pointing out the bad, that is detrimental to building the team. Another mistake, the third one we're going to talk about that management makes, is they want to, if you have this in your situation, I feel for you, but if you have a manager that takes responsibility for all of the growth and the good things that happen, and yet when something negative, when it's a slow month or a poor result, they blame others. This is so detrimental to building your team. I hope that you look at these three things, analyze yourself. Hopefully you're not in that situation, but if you see yourself in your day-to-day activities, in any of those, use it as a coaching tool and throw it in the trash where it belongs. Some positive team building things that you can do, I think regular meetings is a positive. And then in those meetings, you point out the progress and the good performers and the good results. That doesn't mean you don't discuss anything negative, but you have communication that's open and honest and points out the good things that are going on. Includes in this discussion listening to the team. If you have a situation where you have a meeting and you don't encourage the team involvement and you don't listen to the team members, so if someone pulls you aside and says, I have a concern, and you don't listen and you don't involve them, that's not going to be a positive for your team. You can't have a situation where there's a dictatorship and have it be a positive. You want to have a positive work environment, never allow a dictatorship. Open discussion, available, easy to approach. These are the things that you want to have to stimulate a good, solid team. And a third thing here, a good team environment, the manager always gives credit to the team on the good things that are going on. Always gives credit to the team and accepts no praise for themselves. Whenever they get a praise for their management, it always goes towards the team. I've talked about often the 5-to-1 program, and actually I want to promise the next newsletter is going back to great detail about this 5-to-1 program. Those of you that don't know about it or haven't heard about it, that's where I say that we need a ratio of 5 good things that we're talking about to people in a day-to-day environment. 5 good things that we're talking about to 1 that needs attention. And I view that just like a checking account. If you have a negative balance in this, if you're pointing out all of the negatives, 5 negatives, to 1 positive, that's just like bouncing a check. The negative balance, and you'll never build a strong team environment. And the last thing on today's call that I want to talk about on building a wonderful team. And this, it might seem to be trivial, and it might be hard to do. Never said any of this is easy. But a good team-building member of management admits their mistakes quickly and openly with the team. There's no one that's achieved perfection that I'm aware of. A good manager understands that, and the team appreciates it when a manager says, you know what, guys, I made an error on that one. Forgive me. Apologize for it. Now let's move on from that. How can we overcome the challenge we're facing together? But I want to apologize for making this error. The team appreciates that and rallies around it. But there's no hidden secret here either. The team already knows the manager made the error. They might have known if they were involved in that discussion. They might have known it was an error before it was ever tried. If they were asked and the manager was open to input and went back to those regular meetings and open discussions. But members of management need to admit their errors, take responsibility for mistakes, and openly admit it with the team. And if possible, in front of the team in one of those regular meetings I was discussing about. And one final thing on the meetings, these regular meetings don't have to be an hour long with PowerPoint slideshows and all of that. An informal 5-10 minute gathering a couple times a week or at least once a week is what I'm discussing here. And if it takes longer or someone's got an issue that is a complaint, don't allow that to control these meetings in this team environment. Say, hey, I'll talk with you about that later and get back to that. Keep it short. Keep it simple. Keep it positive. All right. Well, everybody have a super day. Thanks for your attendance. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.